Welcome everyone to the UU Church of Tullahoma, and thank you for joining us this morning in person, on Zoom, or YouTube. Would you like the chalice, Tom?
I guess I could.
We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet, and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Announcements. Tom.
Let's see, I guess it's the 17th, Thursday, second Thursday, we're going to do our poetry bunch here, and we'll look forward to that. We've got about maybe up to 10 or so, I guess, typically.
It's a nice little group.
It's a nice little group, yes, and she is part of it.
Yes, I am part. What time?
6 o'clock, right there. Around.
Yeah, we have a table we sit around.
Yeah.
So you don't have to look at other
And a
people's feet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Rick.
Yeah, thank you. The Thursday night group is in conflict this Thursday with a writer, so we won't be meeting. We've been in sort of a recess because Chuck's been traveling the last 2 or 3 weeks, but we'll get back after next Thursday. We don't do it in conflict because some of us are doing the writing and want to.
Yeah.
Sounds
And
good.
you can come and join us if you want to.
Sounds good. Jim?
Yeah, thank you. So several announcements. The nonviolent communication class will start tomorrow, Monday at 6 p.m. It's an introductory class. It's not and then the first of the 14 weeks classes will start after that. So there is still time if somebody wants to join the class. There's a little bit of room. We do have 10 people in the class right now, so that's great. So if you are interested, let Cass or I know. Let me know. We will have a new members service next Sunday, the 15th. So if you're aware of somebody who might want to join, let me know, or have that person at least come to church for the service next Sunday.
Would you send an email out about that?
I can, yeah. All right. Yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah, we can send an email to the group. Yep. I'll make a note of that. We still do need, I believe, another service leader. That would be great. I think we're short one. So if you'd like to do that, get in touch with Lisa. Lisa Knight is now the chairman of the program committee. So Lisa will be coordinating that. And thank you, Lisa, for stepping up. And also, we could use another person on the finance committee. This is a real important committee. We're really helping Costa, our treasurer, with that role and trying to lighten her workload. But another person serving there would be great. Along that same line, in past years, the treasurer has sent out a letter to everybody who donated, summarizing your donations for the previous tax year. In order to lighten the load on Costa, we're not going to do that this year. If you do itemize and you do need that letter, you don't have the records yourself, get in touch with Costa and she'll take care of that. But it's not going to go out to everybody. And then we do have a board meeting next Sunday after service. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Next Sunday's speaker will be Robin Dunn, one of our favorite speakers, and she has not entitled her talk yet, so we will all figure it out together. If you would like to donate to our church, please make a check payable to the UU Church of Tullahoma and send to our treasurer, Karen Price, P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma 37388, or drop it in the little shaker box back there under the clock.
Carrie?
Yes.
Karen is no longer our treasurer.
You're right, and I'm just reading. I'm sorry.
So I'll update that, Nick.
I apologize to everyone, including Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't even. Just reading.
Just reading.
That's one thing about being the leader for the service leader. I wanted to say that. It's all scripted. You don't have to figure out anything except some of the readings. So I really enjoy doing it. So please, somebody else speak up and say they want to do it. One more person. That's all we need. Just one more person. Okay, we have a responsive reading 550. And I'm sorry I didn't send it out to people that are on Zoom. We belong to the earth. This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth.
This we know, all things are connected, like the blood which unites one family.
All things are connected.
Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the sons and daughters of the earth.
We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it.
Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.
Chief Noah Self. Our speaker this morning is Tom Bentley, and he's going to be speaking about the joy of poetry.
We're going to give it a try. Well, and Roberta's going to help too. So, anyway. Gosh, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I guess. I don't know when it was exactly, but we did. It was kind of the opposite of what I'm trying to do today. And what we did was basically talk then about all the poets, the famous poets that always talked about death and dying. So this one is called Joy of Poetry, and let's hope it works, okay? Everything I've done here is in big print. My problem is getting worse as I get older and older. So anyway, we're gonna give this a try and see what happens. Several years ago, as I said, we gave a talk focused on that most what poets have dealt with at one time or another. So we're going to be looking at that. So I'm looking for happy, blissful, and merry content, okay? In particular, there are certain poetic forms or genres that lend themselves to inclusion in poetry, such as limericks, satirical poetry, and some of them outright humorous. Now doesn't necessarily mean joyous, okay? So that's we'll see how that works. So let us explore the poetry first avowed by funny poets, people like Ogden Nash, for example. Those like Chalice Silverstein or even Dr. Zeus. There are other poets such as Poet Laureate Billy Collins, who is not only funny but extremely insightful. He was a Poet Laureate. Some of you may know already the brief poem called Lanyard, and brings home to every summer camp participant that ever braided a plastic lanyard to bring back and give to their mother. So we might consider the outwardly funny poets first, and contenders for the best authors of the most joyful writings. I don't know what I'm going to say. So that's where I got started with all this. And so my favorite person is Shel Silverstein. The Not Yet Dead Poets, which went on for about, 10 years, I guess, every week, which was maybe more than that. Shel Silverstein was born in Chicago in 1930. He died in 1999 in Key West. And he was probably the best known cartoonist, children's author, poet, songwriter, and playwright, best known for his light verse and quirky cartoons. He was in the U.S. Army in the 50s and worked for Stars and Stripes. At the high point of his popularity, he was with Playboy from 1957, did various documentaries then. But we think him as a writer of children's books. Listen to the mustn'ts, child, listen to the don'ts, listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, possibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves, listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer. If you are a pretender, come sit by my fire. For we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in. And if the track is tough and the hill is rough, thinking you can just ain't enough. A dear friend of mine was an Ogden Nash fan, Patty Clemens. I don't know if some of you know Patty Clemens, some of you know Pat Clemens, her husband. Mr. Pat was both of them were very talented sailors and poets. She would read many of these simple 2-4-liners every week for several years at Morning Point. And many of the not yet dead poets would read to folks over there, and they would read in turn to others. All from memory, even though they were suffering from dementia. So here are 3 small poems, if you wish, by Ogden Nash. God is in his wisdom made the fly, and then forget to tell us why. Love it. Okay, the cow. This is my favorite. The cow is a bovine ilk. One end is moo, and the other end is milk. And Patty would do this one, I think, almost every time. She was suffering from dementia, which was really sad in many ways, but of course she knew an awful lot. She was a painter, she was an artist, a sailor, just a remarkable person, and we lost her about 2 years ago, I guess. So this is her favorite one. It's called Reflections on Ice Breaking. Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. Yeah, right, me too. I like it. All right, I don't know if that was overly joyous at all, but anyways, it's a neat one. Her friend, fellow not yet dead poet members, Christy Beavers, who has written some of her favorite poems, but her favorite poem was Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's The Children's Hour. So I'm going to read that to you because I think it's a great one, and I like it too, and only because she brought it up. So here we go. It's called The Children's Hour. Between the dark and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lower, comes a pause in the day's occupations that is known as the children's hour. I hear in the chamber above me the patter of little feet, the sound of a door that is opened, and voices soft and sweet. From my study I see in the lamplight, descending the broad hall stair, grave Alice and laughing Allegra and Edith with golden hair. A whisper and then a silence, yet I know by their merry eyes they are plotting and planning together to take me by surprise. A sudden rush from the stairway, a sudden raid from the hall, by 3 doors left unguarded,
They enter my castle wall. They climb up into my turret, or the arms and back of my chair. If I try to escape, they surround me. They seem to be everywhere. They almost devour me with kisses, thus arms about me entwine, till I think of the Bishop of Bingen in his mouse tower on the Rhine. Do you think, O blue-eyed banditti, because you have scaled the wall, such an old mustache as am I is not a match for you all? I have you fast in my fortress, and will not let you depart, but put you down into the dungeon of the round tower of my heart. And there will I keep you forever, yes, forever and a day, till the walls shall crumble to ruin and molder in dust away. I really like that poem. So, and that brings me joy. So that's one I think is good. So here we go. Are there lessons in these poems? And I think there are. Certainly poetry has power. One of the greatest powers is to let you step into a moment or have a feeling with some other person. It could be the poet himself, it could be yourself, it could be others. Anyway, I feel that emotion too. That's what we're talking about. If you don't have an exact experience that maps one-to-one with a poem, reading poetry can still be a wonderful way to find common ground. We may see the world through the poet's eyes. Poetry deals with all aspects of the human experience and all feelings. And sometimes it's wonderful to step into a moment of joy with family members or like-minded community or members such as us, our church. Poems about happiness can lift us up when we feel down and remind us that there's good in the world even when things seem bleak. And we certainly have been through all that. One of members of the Highland Rim Scottish Society, we have famous poets. We have a banquet and all sorts of things, talking about Sir Walter Scott, for example, Robbie Burns, other poets. But this year, Robert Louis Stevenson was our famous poet. He was born in 1850 and died in 1894. He died in Villanoma in Samoa of tuberculosis. But he was the author of A Children's Garden of Verses, Treasure Island, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Songs of Travel and Other Verses. The author takes the reader on a journey through the imagination of a boy. And that's in particular the Songs of Travel and Other Verses. The author takes the reader on a journey through the imagination of a boy by discussing real and fictional places to which he would like to travel. Stevenson illustrates the theme of traveling by imagining all the places he has read and learned about. Poetry is a common theme that is often used as a travel metaphor for life. There's lots of other metaphors for life, like streams going from the mountains to the sea and so forth. Joy of poetry is often the result of a parent reading poetry to a child at bedtime. A vast number of us have poems recited from a child's garden of verses. Our group, when I asked how many people had the book, A Child's Garden of Verses, this is like Scottish Society, about half of the people all had that particular book. So you'll see something from it. Okay, here's one from Robert Louis Stevenson, and it's from Child's Garden of Verses. It's called My Shadow. Y'all know about that? How many know that? Probably do. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He is very, very like me from the heels to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow. Not at all like proper children, which are always very slow. He always shoots up taller than an Indian rubber ball. And he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. He hasn't got a notion of how children ought to play, and can only make a fool of me in every sort of way. He stays so close beside me, he's a coward, you can see. I think you shame to stick to Nursey as the shadow sticks to me. One morning very early, before the sun was up, I rose and found the shining dew on every buttercup. But my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepyhead, had stayed at home behind me and was fast asleep in bed. She knows these. So. This one is a poem by Eloise Greenfield, and captured a lot of my memories. And I ran into this, and it's neat. And I'll tell you about why this one comes to me. This one is close to me. It's my cousins from a little town, Bethune, South Carolina, a town of about 500. Back in the 50s, our families would get together in Charlotte, North Carolina at our house or theirs. Accents and peculiar sayings would abound, like, crack the window. Y'all know about that one? Since we're kind of in the South, this is not unusual. I mean, I think most of us have heard a lot of these things. But y'all, of course, I was born in Oak Park, Illinois, okay, so it's a different thing. And mash the button. We know about mash the button. It's the doorbell, okay? But that's a Southernism. And of course, we were all kind of Yankees, but it turns out I'm really from here, this area too, which is amazing. Especially going back home to a racially divided community. My cousin, is now living in Santa Monica. She's the only cousin left. But when they would go back to Bethune, it was quite a sight. My cousin's husband is half Japanese and half Korean. So you can imagine what it might be like in this little kind of racially divided town. Anyway. Oh, wait a minute, can I read it? Read a little bit of it. This is an excerpt of it. It's called Honey, I Love. I love a lot of things, a whole lot of things, like my cousin comes to visit and you know he's from the South. Because every word he says kind of slides out of his mouth. I like the way he whistles and I like the way he walks, but honey, let me tell you that love the way he talks. I love the way my cousin talks. All right. This is Alfred Lord Tennyson. He had a dear friend, and he passed away from apparently a cerebral hemorrhage. And I was aware of this deals. I know this deals with death. This is not really what I was hoping to do. So, but he wrote a memoriam, and I'll give you a little excerpt from it. So he actually wrote this memoriam to him, and I'm just going to read only 4 lines of it, which came out of it. But for 17 years, he worked on that memoriam, and I've done something similar to that many years for years ago on a similar sort of thing, kind of thinking through my religious background, and but anyway, here we go. There's nothing like the joy of coming to a conclusion that solves the pain and suffering of a dilemma, especially those that are of an existentialist nature. Religious joy is a fringe benefit from organized religious belief, no matter how misguided or unfounded it might be. So this came from this particular writing of Sir Alfred Lord Tennyson, in memoriam to his friend. I hold it true, whatever befall, I feel when I sorrow most. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. So I think we've all heard that one. Okay, this one is The Road Not Taken. And you probably all know this particular poem. Let's go toward a kinder, gentler form of poetry and support that makes making of tough decisions. The example we'll use here is familiar one. It is a familiar one that many have committed to memory, bits of joy in the otherwise difficult decision-making process. First, I'd like to say that Central Park, New York City, and Swanee campus have a lot in common. They were designed by the same concept attributed to Frederick Law Olmsted. The guiding principle that leads to a more peaceful, experienced outdoor experience, the principle is simply never have more than 3 roads or paths meeting at one point. And it works especially well for Robert Frost's poem, and of course the Swanee campus as well. If you go up to Swanee, and probably most of you all been there, you're not going to find any crossroads like this. You'll see three things coming together. So when you have to make a decision, it's just a simple decision, right or left, whatever. By the way, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, right? Yogi Berra. All right. So here we go. This is, y'all seen this before. 2 roads diverge in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler along I stood, and looked down as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then I took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there had worn them about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how ways lead to way, I doubted if I would ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I traveled by, and it made all the difference. One of my favorite poems, and when we would go over to Morning Point, every week, we were different people, and they would come up. Some people would come up with their favorite poems at Morning Point, and this turned out to be one of my favorite poems. It's called John Masefield. This poem was written by a chap from Herefordshire in England, studied to be a merchant seaman. Okay, in 1895, he deserted his ship in New York City. For the many folks that made up the Not Yet Dead Poets Society, a very significant number of them were sailors. Mr. Pat Clemens, to name just a couple. And then there were a lot of them. I think out of all the people that were in the Not Yet Dead Poets, at least a third, and maybe sometimes more than half, were sailors, it turns out. So one of the most requested poems was Sea Fever, and it's one of my favorites too. So I'll read it. Sea Fever. I must go down to the seas again, to the lonely sea and sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, and the wheels kick in the wind song and the white sails shaking, and a gray mist on the sea face, and a gray dawn breaking. I must go down to the seas again, for the call of the running tide is a wild call and a clear call that may not be denied. And all I ask is a windy day, for the call of the running tide, and a wild call, and all I ask is a windy day. Hang on, I'm starting over again here. And all I ask is a windy day when the white clouds flying, and the flung spray, and the blown spume, and the seagulls crying. I must go down to the seas again, to the vagrant gypsy life, to the gull's way and the whale's way, where the wind's like a whetted knife. And all I ask is a merry yarn from a laughing fellow rover, and quiet sleep, and a sweet dream when the long trick's over. I experienced that. We took a trip trying to take a sailboat from the Keys to Galveston. It was supposed to take about a week and a half. Great thing. Turned out to be a year and a half. it's for various reasons. But we had tremendous amount of waves and tremendous amount of very high winds that just kept coming down from the northeast. And on the second night, it cleared up, slowed down a little bit. We weren't seasick as bad as we were. And it turned out that I was on the tiller, and we were making it, or on the wheel. And it was very clear, and I just looked up and I could see a star and the rigging, and I could just guided my time steering by just watching that star, and it was great. It was wonderful. And dolphins flitting around beside us, and you could hear them. It's really great fun. Okay, this one is called Love. And joy, love is joy in many ways. This poem in many ways could be a script from modern day scenario film. It deals with war, devotion, romantic love. It even has a gallant knight in shining armor. And I still ask, but does it bring joy? And I think it does. It's that kind of joy that we have when we gather together and have new insights from new ideas. In many ways, the essence of the romantic poem, as we might see it today, Coleridge was a major influence on other poets of his day, such as Wordsworth, and he wrote The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. We probably, in high school, we all had to memorize parts of The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This deals with specific horrific things we deal with today, especially in war, and in the end, its after effects in the form of a soldier's heart, we often call moral PTSD. But I like the former definition better, and I included the one because it speaks to the truth of man's inhumanity to man, and While joy is not self-evident, the understanding and caring of one's human soul for another can be inspiring and joyful. The poem is simply called Love. And these are just excerpts. So this has to do with knight in shining armor and all sorts of things that we'll talk about. But it is, anyway, let me read it here. This is just an excerpt. All thoughts, all passions, all delights, whatever stirs the mortal frame, all are but ministers of love and feed his sacred flame. Oft in my waking dreams do I live o'er and o'er again the happy hour, when midway on the mount I lay, beside the ruined tower. The moonshine stealing o'er the scene had blended with the lights of eve, and she was there, my hope, my joy, my own dear Genevieve. 'Twas partly love and partly fear, and partly 'twas a bashful heart, that I might rather feel than see the swelling of her heart. I calmed her fears, she was calm, and so told her love was of virgin pride, and so I won my Genevieve, my bright and beauticious bride. This was basically in war. I know this is not a joy thing in some ways, but basically what happened, this knight in shining armor, if you wish, comes in, saves her from other people that were going to do bad things to her. He ends up fighting them off and is in bad shape, and then she takes care of him. It's a form of love, and just, well, anyway, here we go. Alrighty, this is you, kiddo. Roberta's gonna do, you ready? Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna liven up things here in a moment. Poets have been in my family for at least 5 generations. Going back to my father's uncle, who was published in the Harvard papers. My father wrote poetry, I write it, 2 of my children write it, and a grandchild of mine writes poetry. It's been one of the biggest joys of my life since I was a child. I'm told that when I was 21 months old, I could recite My Shadow, which Tom read to us. I don't remember that, but I'm told there were witnesses. So. When I was a little older, I would go for walks around the block and around the neighborhood with my mother at night. I loved these walks because she would invariably recite poetry to us. And one of the favorites of myself and my siblings, I'm going to recite to you now. This particular poem was written in 1885 by James Whitcomb Riley. It inspired a comic strip later years in 1924 and even a musical in 1980. So the poem is Little Orphan Annie. Little Orphan Annie's come to our house to stay, to wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch and tend the hearth and sweep, and make the fire and bake the bread and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we sit around the fire and has the mostest fun, listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers, and when he went to bed way upstairs, his mammy heard him holler and his daddy heard him bawl, and when they turned the covers down, he wasn't there at all.
They seeked him in the rafter room and cubby hole and press. They seeked him up the chimney flue and everywhere, I guess. But all they ever found was just his pants around about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And once there was a little girl who'd always laugh and grin and make fun of everyone and all her blood and kin. And once when there was company and old folks was there, she mocked 'em and she shocked 'em and she said she didn't care. And this she kicked her heels and turned to run and hide. There were two great big black things a standing by her side. And they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knows what she's about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And little orphan Annie says, when the blaze is blue and the lamp wick sputters and the wind goes, ooh, and you hear the crickets quit and the moon is gray and the lightning bugs and dew is all squinched away, then you better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them that loves you, and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones this cluster's all about, or the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. Okay. One of my favorites.
We couldn't tell.
That's it.
I just wanted to say, I left this out. I used to recite this when I kept the nursery at church. I used to recite this to the kids, and as soon as I'd finish the poem, they'd go, say it again. Okay, you gonna finish up?
That's it.
Thank you, Tom and Roberta.
Okay.
That was wonderful. One of the things I really like about us having drawing our speakers from our congregation is that we get to learn a little bit more about them. And that is, ooh, that's loose. Thank you. We get to learn a little bit more about them, and that's a wonderful thing. So, thank you, Tom and Roberta, for sharing yourselves this morning. Okay, our closing song is 414. So stand as you are willing and able, and let us sing 414. It's the very last one in the book. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. And so it is. See y'all in about, we'll get back here together at 10 after 11.
Thank you. I took notes.
Oh, you should have.
I have stuff to send to people.
You didn't mention
That's how I take
the
notes.
poem.